Welcome back to Thinking About Home Education. You are here with Maria, and I'm sat here with my hot water. To be honest, I don't drink a lot of tea. I am a coffee girl in the mornings, and then if I do have a cup of tea, I will have a herbal tea. But my voice seems to be a bit croaky today, so I thought I'll have a hot water and see if that helps. I got the idea for today's Thoughtcast when listening back to Monday's edition. I was curious to hear myself talking about the fear that I had in regards to our home ed journey, and I just thought that it might be worth exploring that a little bit more, because I have no doubt that this applies to all parents really, whether they home educate or whether they send their children to school. I realised as I was reflecting back on that fear wasn't really what I was feeling. I realised that I was expressing the anxiety that I was feeling about this choice that we had made. Because it hadn't been tried or tested in our family, there was really nothing to build a sense of security on other than the experiences of other people, which, while helpful and inspiring, it was still an exercise of faith and hope that this thing really was going to work. I thought that it would be worth exploring what anxiety and worry is and how it can actually be a powerful tool in our parenting and in life in general. I really like Karla McLaren's work on the emotions. She is an empathy researcher, and what she has done is pulled apart the different emotions and talked about how they might be linked and what they teach us about ourselves. Karla talks about worry and anxiety being linked to the need to focus and have completion. I also really like that she talks about the gifts that our emotions can be in our lives. So for instance, the gift that worry and anxiety may bring us is that it might bring things closer to us. It gives us foresight. It brings us into focus with what is important to us. It may delve into our conscience and help us see areas where we may have to improve in relationships, for instance. It helps us to see tasks that need completing, and it alerts us to when we are procrastinating. Now, procrastination is a really big one for me, and there are so many times where I do feel worry and anxiety, and when I sit with that feeling for a little while, I realise that it's because I'm procrastinating. I'm putting off what needs to be done. When I delve into that a little bit further, I realise that there is often reasons why I'm procrastinating. It isn't just that I'm being lazy, that there are other emotions attached to that procrastination. Perhaps I don't feel good enough. Perhaps I'm not sure of my own ability in that area. I might have a fear of failure. I might feel a little bit frightened about going into a new environment and not knowing the people that are there. It could also be that there's some instinctual connection that perhaps I know that this isn't a good thing for me to be doing and it isn't sitting right with me, but rather than listening to that, I am putting off doing what needs to be done. You might be a very stoic person, and so these feelings are different for you because you may feel them and just decide that you are going to feel the fear and do it anyway. I think it's important that when we are in some way incapacitated by what we are feeling, that we spend some time thinking and reflecting on why that might be happening rather than just giving in to the emotion. What does this have to do with home education? I hear you say. Perhaps nothing, depending on the type of person you are. But for me, I find that when I'm feeling those feelings, that there is usually a good reason for it. And if I can work out what that reason is, then I'm empowered to do something about my situation rather than just live as a victim to what I'm feeling all the time. There was a time where I made my identity about what I was feeling. So I might say, I'm an anxious person, I'm a fearful person, I'm a happy person, I'm a compassionate person, whatever the identity is, rather than just saying I'm a person and sometimes I feel these things. I found that when I've stopped identifying or labeling myself as a person who is anxious or fearful or worried, that it allows the emotion to just be there and be a part of who I am, but not who I am. So what might my anxiety and worry have to do with home education? Well, there have been many times that I have felt anxious because I'm looking around at what other people are doing. This may lead me to feel unsettled. They say that comparison is the thief of joy, and I really believe that to be true when it comes to home education, because it is very easy to look at somebody's Facebook or Instagram life and think, oh my gosh, they are doing so many wonderful things and we are not doing those things, so therefore we aren't good enough, we're not like them. And it robs us of joy. It stops us from living in the present moment and enjoying the life we do have. And it creates those feelings of anxiety because now we feel that we have to be doing something that we didn't feel until we saw what somebody else was doing. The flip side of this is that when we identify those areas where we then start to feel anxious about perhaps not doing what other people are doing, is it because we're not jealous or wanting to live their life, but is it really because we have identified something within us that we really do yearn for and that we would like to have? There have been times when I have looked at people's Facebook stories, their Instagram accounts, and thought to myself, you know what, I would really like to have a group of friends around me like that I can go and do those things with. And that isn't because I wanted to live their life with their friends. It was because I realised that I had had this real lack within me for that deep community. And so those feelings of anxiousness that I was feeling when I looked at their life wasn't to do with jealousy, but it was to do with, I want that too. I realised that there's something lacking in my life. And so I then could do something about that. I could set out to make those kind of relationships and have those kinds of friendships with people. I really like that Karla McLaren talks about the intensity of an emotion, and she breaks it up into several categories. So I'm going to use some examples within home education to talk about how that might work. So for instance, Karla talks about the soft state of anxiety. Now, an example of this might be, you know that you have to go to a home education event tomorrow. You've never been to this location. You're not really sure how to get there, but you have this underlying anxiety about the day. When we stop and think about it, we may realize that that is because we've not really spent any time planning our route or which motorway we're going to take. Perhaps we need to have a look and see if there are things that we need to take, whether we need to take a packed lunch, whether we need wet weather gear. So that underlying anxiety about the event, when we stop and listen to it, might just be that we need to spend some time doing some really practical things that help alleviate the anxiety that we're feeling in that moment. Karla then talks about the mood state of anxiety, and this is more of an intense experience of it. It may even affect how we relate to other people a little bit because it is because of the intensity. She suggests we might feel a bit snippy at this time and perhaps have some lack of patience with others. I'm sure you can relate if you're anything like me. I remember feeling this kind of anxiety as I was thinking about kids needing to take GCSEs in the future, and I was beginning to feel really worried and overwhelmed almost sometimes with that sense of panic and anxiety about that. But what happened was, when I listened to what was happening in my body and listened to why I might have been feeling that way, I then could start to plan for what needed to happen to get them to that point. I was more focused, I had more clarity. It brought me to a place where I could formulate a plan. The next phase that Karla talks about is an intense state, and I'll read you what it says here. This is from her website, karlamclaren.com. and it's welcoming the gifts of anxiety. And she says, your anxiety will be in a kind of feedback loop, which could be initiated by many things. Internally, it could be generated by an increase in adrenaline, cortisol, heart rate, or other physical conditions unrelated to task completion. But you feel those ramped up intensities and think, oh, I've just got so much to do. How am I possibly going to home educate the children? How am I going to get everything done that I need to do? I am so overwhelmed with my week. Externally, the intense level of anxiety could be initiated by a sudden and overwhelming close deadline, for instance, me looking at GCSEs, or by a flurry of things that need to be handled but are actually impossible for one person to do. And I think that that's a really good point. Often I have been in that intense state of anxiety when I have taken on everything by myself. And sometimes that may mean that I need to talk to the kids about being more committed and self-directed in their work. Sometimes that means I might need to find a tutor, or for us, quite often what it meant was talking to the kids about how they wanted to do GCSEs and bringing them along in the journey and saying, how are we going to make this happen for you? I do know that when I didn't listen to what was happening and start problem solving the solutions within that moment of anxiety, that I didn't seem to be able to do anything right. I got myself very much in a tizzy. I might start snapping at people. I might find that I'm only doing jobs half-assed, to use that expression, because my mind and my body is so wrapped up with the anxiety that I'm not really doing anything well. I'm almost in a loop, and what I really need to do in that moment is to stop, take some deep breaths, maybe put on a meditation, or sit down with a piece of paper and a pen and write a list of things that may help me get through what I need to do, or even what I need to give up, so that I have got space to be able to do the things that I deem important well. Karla has some great tips for helping you work through and identify the emotions on her website if you would like to learn a little bit more about what anxiety and worry might be teaching you about your life. I will put a link to her page on her blog about worry and anxiety in the YouTube information section down below. The other thing that I would like to add before I sign off for today is that when I stopped identifying my emotions, or rather categorizing my emotions as either being good or bad, negative or positive, I found that I was freer to just feel them. I don't know about you, but sometimes I could get really down on myself for feeling depressed or anxious or worried and think, you shouldn't really feel like this. You've got this great life, you've got a lovely family, you live in a nice home. Why are you feeling this way? And I would almost add emotion to emotion, because now then I was feeling all kinds of other emotions about the emotion that I was feeling in the first place. And that's just a vicious circle. So when I stopped categorizing them and then feeling down on myself for feeling it, I was just able to say, okay, I feel anxious. That's not good or bad. It just is. So what is my anxiety trying to tell me today? And I found that when I was able to do that, that there were really great lessons behind what I was feeling. It showed me the way forward of what might need to be done, what might need to be changed, what I might need to add to my life, what I might need to take away from my life, where I might need other people's help, where I was trying to do way too much on my own, what was really important to me, what wasn't really important to me. And I was able to really start living from that place within me that felt real and authentic and instinctual, rather than having the pressures of others or what I should be doing. Now that I have started to do that I'm able to be more me and listen to the heartbeat of what I think is right for me and my family. I really appreciate you joining me today. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to have a dialogue about what you think about worry and anxiety. If you felt like you could do that in the comments section below. I hope this coming week is kind to you, and I look forward to seeing you again on Monday. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.